Bernie Moreno was tired of Fauci's games. Let's take a look.
And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people.
During a Senate hearing the MSM barely covered, Moreno confronted Fauci, exposing the legal games surrounding his testimony while reminding everyone of the role he played during the pandemic. So if you believe truth isn't partisan, hit the subscribe button and let's jump right into it.
Mr. Fauci, do you know who David Schertler is?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. What does the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution say?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
No, I'm just asking you what it says.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm going to give the Constitution to my aide. He'll bring it over to you so you can have it for future reference. I think it's something that every American should know what the Constitution says. Do you know who wrote the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
So you're invoking a right that you don't know who wrote it or what it says. Is that correct?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Wow. All right, let me tell you who David Schertler is for the audience because he was ejected by the chairman. He's a high-profile criminal attorney. He's represented some really great people, like Senator Bob Menendez. Maybe that's somebody who my Democrat colleagues may remember took gold bars as bribes from the Egyptians. And there's an article here in the Washington Free Beacon that talks about why you would hire a guy like David Schertler. And the comment is, if you're in deep shit, that's who you call. Do you feel like you're in deep shit?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Now, you've probably seen many clips of Fauci pleading the Fifth, and that's because he did it more than 100 times. His legal strategy is straightforward. Say as little as possible and force Congress to fight him on technicalities. Especially since he's testified before multiple committees over the years. The government now has his diary entries, and anything he says could potentially be used against him. His lawyers told the BBC that their client is on, quote, strong legal ground. But that might not be the case at all. Senator Paul is already looking to fast-track the process of holding him in contempt of Congress. Plus, the Fifth Amendment is supposed to apply on a question-by-question basis, meaning it doesn't normally allow a witness to refuse every single question, including basic ones like, what's the color of your tie? Or do you see the red folder in front of you? There's also precedent showing just how messy this can get. Back in 2013, when IRS official Louise Lerner gave an opening statement and then pled the Fifth, the House later voted to hold her in contempt, although the DOJ ultimately refused to prosecute. Fauci's case is not 100% identical, considering there's also the question of just how valid his pardon actually is and what it legally covers. So it'll be all up to the DOJ and the courts next. Now to the juicier part, because Bernie shifted the focus to the real-world consequences of the policies Fauci pushed for, and he went all out on it. Now before we play that though, we have a quick word from today's sponsor. Now, in our last video, we covered Vault Strategic Mining, trading as KNXFF in the US and KNOX in Canada, and how the company was building what could become one of America's most strategic tungsten portfolios. Since then, the story has accelerated. Vault has expanded its footprint by acquiring 4 historic tungsten assets, anchored by its flagship war bond project in Nevada. Now, the timing really couldn't be better. The US remains heavily dependent on foreign tungsten, with roughly 90% of global supply controlled by our adversaries. See, this goes beyond mining. Tungsten is essential for modern defense, from aircraft carriers and armored vehicles to precision-guided munitions. That's why Washington has made securing domestic minerals a national priority. With billions in government support flowing into domestic supply chains, Vault is positioning itself right where that demand meets policy. So if you want to learn more about them, check the link in the description. Hey, special thanks to Vault Strategic Mining for making today's video possible.
There was a mom in Ohio during the depth of the coronavirus pandemic, decided to go to her high school football game for her son. They hadn't been out much. The kids had been learning at school, and then the school got shut down. They hadn't really gotten much out of that education. As any parent knew, that remote learning was no learning at all. But it was a Friday night. Her son wanted to go watch a buddy go play football. So they went to the stadium. They sat alone, far from everybody else, just a mom, a dad, a few kids. They didn't feel they needed to wear masks because it was stupid, because they were outside. They all live together. They're not near anybody. Dr. Fauci, do you know what happened to that mom and that family? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
They were dragged out of that stadium and arrested. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace. So let me ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, do you have the dignity to just say you're sorry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
So you won't apologize to the military members who Joe Biden summarily dismissed from the military for not taking the vaccine?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Will you apologize to that mom from Ohio for being arrested for watching a football game with her family?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It's no secret why you have to hire the biggest dirtbag attorney on the planet, because of what you did. I hope you're paying him well. And I hope that one way or the other, somewhere, sometime, you answer for your crimes.
Now, the mom Bernie mentioned was actually tased before being arrested, even though she reportedly told officers she had asthma and thus couldn't wear a mask. Looking back, that entire period feels like a fever dream. And now one of the most recognizable faces of that era is invoking the Fifth during a hearing examining both the origins of the pandemic and the federal government's response to it. Now sure, we've had plenty of hearings on this matter, but this time we have more declassified materials than ever, along with Fauci's own diary entries that directly contradict many of the things he told Congress. We're at a point where even the New York Times published an opinion piece the other day titled, quote, "Fauci and the Democrats have a lot to answer for." At the end of the day, it's fair to argue one man's influence affected decisions that disrupted millions of lives, something he should definitely answer for.